Good morning, children. In the continuation of our lesson, Electoral Politics, Chapter 4 of Civics book, we have already seen about what are elections, why do we need election, what makes election democratic, is it not? Today, we are going to see about what is our system of elections. To answer this question, let us take a look at how elections are held in India. Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha elections are held regularly after every 5 years. After 5 years, the term of all elected representatives come to an end. Elections are held in all constituencies at the same time, either on the same day or within a few days, and this is called general election. Sometimes election is held only for one constituency to fill the vacancy caused by death or resignation of member, called by-elections. In this chapter, we will focus on general elections. The election in India is comprised of various stages: electoral constituencies, voters list, nomination of candidates, election campaign, polling and counting of votes, in which, regarding electoral constituency, first of all, the whole country is divided into different areas for purposes of elections, and these areas are called electoral constituencies. The voters who live in an area elect one representative. For Lok Sabha elections, the country is divided into 543 constituencies. The representative elected from each constituency is called a member of parliament or an MP. One of the features of democratic election is that every vote should have equal value. That is why our constitution requires that each constituency should have roughly equal population living within it. Similarly, each state is divided into specific number of assembly constituencies. In this case, elected representative is called member of legislative assembly or MLA. The same principle applies for panchayat and municipal elections. Each village or town is divided into several wards that are like constituencies. Each ward elects one member of village or urban local body. Sometimes these constituencies are counted as seats. For each constituency represent one seat in the assembly. Okay. So now let us see what are the worries of the constitution makers about certain weaker sections of the country and what did they do it to bring them in the mainstream of the politics. The constitution makers, however, were worried that in an open electoral competition, certain weaker sections may not stand a good chance to get elected to Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies. They may not have a required resources, education and contacts to contest and win elections against others. Those who are influential and resourceful may prevent them from winning elections. If that happens, our parliament and assemblies would be deprived of the voice of significant section of our population. That would make our democracy less representative and less democratic. So, the makers of our constitution thought of a special system of reserved constituencies for weaker sections. Some constituencies are reserved for people who belong to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. In a SC reserved constituency, only someone who belongs to the scheduled caste can stand for election. Similarly, only those belonging to ST can contest an election from constituency reserved for ST. Currently, in the Lok Sabha, 84 seats are reserved for SC and 47 for ST. This system of reservation was extended later to other weaker sections at the district and local level. However, the proportion of seats reserved varies from state to state. Similarly, one-third of the seats are reserved in rural and urban local bodies for women candidates. In the next unit, we are going to see about what is voters list. The next stage is the nomination of candidates. We noted that in a democratic election, people should have a real choice. This happens only when there are almost no restrictions on anyone to contest an election. Anyone who can be a voter can also become a candidate in elections. The only difference is that in order to be a candidate, the minimum age is 25 years, while it is only 18 years for being a voter. There are some other restrictions on criminals, etc., but these apply in very extreme cases. Every person who wishes to contest an election has to fill a nomination form and give some money as a security deposit. Recently, a new system of declaration has been introduced on direction from the Supreme Court. Every candidate has to make a legal declaration giving details of serious criminal cases pending against the candidate, details of the assets and liabilities of the candidate and his or her family, and also the education qualification of the candidate. This information has to be made public. This provides an opportunity to the voters to make their decision on the basis of the information provided by the candidates. Is it clear? Once the constituencies are decided, the next step is to decide who can and who cannot vote. This decision cannot be left to anyone till the last day. In a democratic election, the list of those who are eligible to vote is prepared much before the election and given to everyone. This list is officially called the electoral roll and is commonly known as voters list. In our country, all the citizens aged 18 years and above can vote in an election. Every citizen has the right to vote, regardless of his or her caste, religion, or gender. Some criminals and persons with unsound mind can be denied the right to vote, but only in rare situations. It is the responsibility of the government to get the names of all eligible voters put on the voters list. A complete revision of the list takes place every 5 years, and this is done to ensure that it remains up to date. In the last few years, a new system of election photo identity card has been introduced. The voters are required to carry this card when they go out to vote so that no one can vote for someone else. But the card is not yet compulsory for voting. For voting, the voters can show many other proofs of identity like the ration card or the driving license. The next process is election campaign. The main purpose of election is to give people a chance to choose the representatives, the government, and the policies they prefer. Therefore, it is necessary to have a free and open discussion about who is better representative, which party will make a better government, or what is good policy. This is what happens during election campaigns. In our country, such campaigns takes place for a 2-week period between the announcement of the final list of candidates and the date of polling. During this period, the candidates contact their voters, political leaders, address election meetings, and political parties mobilize their supporters. In election campaigns, political parties try to focus public attention on some big issues. They want to attract public to that issue and get them to vote for their party on that basis. Let us look at some of the successful slogans given by different political parties in various elections. The Congress party led by Indira Gandhi gave the slogan of Ghar Bhi Aata in the Lok Sabha elections of 1971. Similarly, Save Democracy was the slogan given by Janata Party in the next Lok Sabha election held in 1977. In a democracy, it is best to leave political parties and candidates free to conduct their election campaigns in the way they want to it. But It is sometimes necessary to regulate campaigns to ensure that every political party and candidate gets a fair and equal chance to compete. So, according to our election law, no party or candidate can bribe or threaten voters, appeal to them in the name of caste or religion, use government resources for election campaign, and spend more than 25 lakhs in constituency for Lok Sabha election or rupees 10 lakhs in a constituency in an assembly election. If they do so, their election can be rejected by the court even after they have been declared elected. In addition to the laws, all political parties in our country have agreed to a model code of conduct for election campaigns. According to this, no party or candidate can use any place of worship for election propaganda, use government vehicles, aircrafts, and officials for elections, and once elections are announced, ministers shall not lay foundation stones of any projects, take any big policy decisions, or make any promises of providing public facilities. Is it clear? Now we have come to the final stage of an election. The final stage of an election is the day when the voters cast or poll their vote. That day is usually called the election day. Every person whose name is on the voters list can go to a nearby polling booth situated usually in a local school or a government office. Once the voter goes inside the booth, the election officials identify her, put a mark on her finger, and allow her to cast her vote. An agent of each candidate is allowed to sit inside the polling booth and ensure that the voting takes place in a fair way. Earlier, the voters used to indicate who they wanted to vote for by putting a stamp on the ballot paper. Ballot paper na a sheet of paper on which the names of the contesting candidates along with party name and symbols are listed. Nowadays, electronic voting machines are used to record votes. The machine shows the names of the candidates and the party symbols. Independent candidates too have their own symbols allotted by the election officials. All the voter has to do is to press the button against the name of the candidate she wants to give her vote. Once polling is over, all the EVMs, that is electronic voting machines, are sealed and taken to a secure place. A few days later, on a fixed date, all the EVMs from a constituency are opened and the votes secured by each candidate are counted. The agents of all the candidates are present there to ensure that the counting is done properly. The candidate who secures the highest number of votes for a constituency is declared elected. In a general election, usually the counting of votes in all the constituencies takes place at the same time on the same day. Television channels, radio, and newspapers report this event. Within a few hours of counting, all the results are declared and it becomes clear as to who will form the next government. So far we have seen the different stages of election process, is it not? Now, let us see what makes elections in India democratic. We get to read a lot about unfair practices in elections, such as inclusion of false names, exclusion of genuine names in the voters list, misuse of government facilities and officials by the ruling party, excessive use of money by rich candidates and big parties, intimidation of voters and rigging on the polling day. We feel unhappy when we read or see such reports. But fortunately, they are not on such a scale so as to defeat the very purpose of elections. This becomes clear if we ask a basic question. Can a party win an election and come to power not because it has popular support but through electoral malpractices? This is a vital question. Let us carefully examine various aspects of this question. One simple way of checking whether elections are fair or not is to look who conducts the elections. Are they independent of the government, or can the government or the ruling party influence or pressurize them? Do they have enough powers to be able to conduct free and fair election? The answer is to all these questions is quite positive for our country. In our country, elections are conducted by an independent and very powerful election commission. It enjoys the same kind of independence that the judiciary enjoys. The Chief Election Commissioner is appointed by the President of India. But once appointed, the Chief Election Commissioner is not answerable to the President or the government. Very few election commissions in the world have such wide-ranging powers as the Election Commission of India. Election Commission takes decisions on every aspect of conduct and control of elections, from the announcement of elections to the declaration of elections. It implements the code of conduct and punishes any candidate or party that violates it. During the election period, the EC can order, Election Commission can order the government to follow some guidelines to prevent use and misuse of governmental power to enhance its chances to win elections or to transfer some government officials. When on election duty, government officers work under the control of Election Commission and not the government. In the last 15 years or so, the Election Commission has begun to exercise all its powers and even expand them. The ruling parties often do not like what EC does, but they have to obey. This would not have happened if the Election Commission was not independent and powerful.